Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to episode 2. We're going to focus this time on asking ecological questions. Remember, the scientific method begins with a question. And so the questions that we'll ask as ecologists will help sort of frame the way that we proceed with our research project. All right, let's go. Check out this tree behind me. There's moss on the trunk, but it doesn't seem to be very evenly distributed. It seems to be a lot denser on one side of the tree than on the other. I wonder why. I wonder how trails themselves affect biodiversity. And does the size of the trail matter? And what's the impact? Does it affect species richness? Does it affect density? I don't know. But I bet you can find out. So going a bit up the hill, you can see this floodplain system here next to the river. And there is a nice opportunity for a study in how a water gradient would impact plants. In other words, further up here on this hill, you would expect the soil to be drier, right, than it is down here when it's still connected to the river via flooding. I wonder how plant communities would change as you move away from this river. So I find myself in this one place at Sapsucker Woods, and on one side of the trail, right behind me, is a very small pond. And right over here on the other side of the trail is a significantly larger pond. I wonder how the size of the pond affects the number of things living in those ponds. Speaking of size, one of the concepts that we'll talk about later in the ecology unit is called island biogeography. And this is a concept that basically says that the larger an island, the more species could live on it. But what you should consider is islands can be defined the traditional way, as is, pieces of land in the middle of the ocean. But they can also be defined as sort of any isolated habitat. For example, these logs right here form islands of habitat that are different than the surrounding habitat, right? So if you look at the size of this log right here and compare it to the size of this log over here, you might be able to hypothesize something about the ecological communities living underneath. You just gotta pick logs that you can actually move. What other kinds of islands can you think of? One of the things that you have to kind of put up with when you live in my neighborhood is deer. Deer are overpopulated and they're just voracious herbivores. They'll eat anything in my yard except for, it seems like, the ferns. Well, some places, like Sapsucker Woods, for example, have tried to control herbivory from large animals like deer. You can see behind me this plastic black fence. This is an experiment that the Lab of Ornithology has been running for a long time to try to exclude deer from an area and see how it affects a host of different kinds of ecological interactions, species richness, diversity, dispersion patterns, all of that stuff. And so if you're interested in studying the impacts of deer, there are lots of opportunities and I can help you find them. Okay, one of those opportunities to study the effects of deer is right here in the Cornell Botanical Gardens. Check this out. This deer exclusion area has a heavy-duty gate, a really tall fence. Deer are not getting through here. It's been here ever since I can remember, and I've had students work in this in the past. We just need to ask permission. Anyway, a possibility. I'm in my backyard and I just had an idea of an ecological experiment that I could do based on stuff that I just find laying around. For example, this is my compost pile from last summer. All right, I could put composted food into little containers. It doesn't even have to be a planter. It could be a Dixie cup. And then I could test how plants grow with the composted soil versus other kinds of soil. Maybe sandy soil or gravelly soil. Just an idea. Here I am at a bird feeder in my backyard. You know, one of the things you can do if you have your own bird feeders is you could set up similar bird feeders in 2 different areas of your yard and count the birds every morning at the same time. That'd be cool.
Usted es capaz de ponerla a andar, ¿no? Pues se supone que ella no le hace nada a uno, pero a mí me da. Vamos a hacer el intento, ¿no? ¿O qué?